It's crazy, gang life just ain't me. So thank God, I found out rapey. I don't do it for the fans, dumb. I just do it for the fans, dumb. And I do it for Balcom. Back in the day, back in the day. Anyway, what's up, y'all? What's up, y'all? So today I'm gonna have a very special guest by the name of Mariam. Thank God she's in Melbourne. I love Melbourne. Soul. That's why I left Sydney. Sydney ain't got no soul. Sydney's just a random place with a lot of money, you know. But that's why I'm a modern Melbourne man. Hey,
Hey, what's
hey, nothing much. How you doing?
up? Amazing. How are you?
Yeah, yeah, I'm good. You don't look like someone who was having a nap not too long ago. You
I
look refreshed.
literally just woke up like 2 minutes ago.
Are you serious?
Legit.
Honestly, don't look it. You honestly don't look it. You know. But
It's a skill.
how do you even take a nap in this heat? How'd you manage that? It's hot. It's been so hot today. No.
It has been so hot, but it's actually so crazy. I actually came back from like the sauna and steam. So I went to yeah, I do that regularly regardless of the heat. So I take naps all the time too.
Tell me something. Is that are you doing that for like skin routine and whatnot? Because I've heard that sauna's pretty good for that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Okay. Cool. I forgot. Do you remember where when I actually met you for the first time or not really? 'Cause
Kind of,
I
not
don't.
really. Remind me.
I no. I also don't remember. I really don't. I don't. I honestly don't. I honestly don't. You know. But that's okay. It doesn't matter. It's not very important. Look, I really wanted to have this conversation with you because I've been following your movements for quite some time. I think that you're one of the people in Melbourne that I look up to in terms of what you do and how much you give back to the community. You understand?
Appreciate that.
And I think that there are a lot of people that could benefit from hearing your story. A lot of
Mm,
people that could probably feel driven and want to do more in their own lives if they hear more from people like yourself. I think that we are just bombarded with so much negativity about African Australians or just people of color in Melbourne that it's sometimes difficult to find those people who are doing the right thing or that are bringing positivity to our communities, and I think you're one of those people, you know so what I'd like to do is, I don't really want to have it sort of like, well, I just want us to have a conversation, so I can get to know you a little bit more. People can get to know you a little bit more. So I guess probably the best place to start is if you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe your upbringing and how you got yourself to where you are, like right now.
wow. Well, firstly, thank you so much for holding this space in celebration because that's a lot of, sorry, I apologize. Just woke up. It was going to take me two
It's
minutes for
okay.
my brain to remember
It's
itself,
okay.
So yeah, I think it's really important that as African members of the African diaspora or African
Mm,
Australian people, some people say,
mm,
coming together in times of celebration
mm,
is a core element of this practice that I'm establishing here. And I'm really grateful also to secondly say that I just want to acknowledge it that I'm on traditional land, you know what I mean? And I
mm,
appreciate the First Nations who have gifted me on in what I call white Australia. So
mm,
yeah, so a bit about me. There's so many parts of my life, and I often forget those parts just because it doesn't relate,
mm,
to the person that I am today. I'm a very much person that has had different phases, you know what I mean, of my life.
mm,
But I guess if we're talking about this most recent stage, I graduated in journalism. And I traveled extensively as a result of that. I went to New South Wales as a journalist and Indonesia, Korea,
oh,
Ethiopia.
wow. Wow.
So I've been to different places, understanding how different cultures interact and
Mm,
how different people live in different settings.
mm-hmm.
And I guess I came back to Australia about like 5 years ago. Like I was born and raised here, like moved around growing up. Like was born in Sydney, did my primary schooling in Perth, did my high schooling in Melbourne, and I
Oh,
moved here in
wow.
2007. Yeah, so I'd moved around a lot, and yeah, I realized regardless of where I was going, uh, regardless of which corner of the world I was in, black people were still treated the same.
Mm,
Um, and for me, I thought that was a really disappointing, but unusual, I think, phenomenon as an African.
mm.
And mind you, like, my mum is Ethiopian and my dad is half Somali, half Yemeni. you know?
Oh wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I came back and I just wanted to do more for people that look like me. And I felt that
Mm,
I was super frustrated by the fact that there were so many people that looked like me that were successful, quote unquote, or had the resources to support their peers and weren't doing it.
right.
So I decided to use my skill set because I believe, look, here's my theory. We all have skills in this world. And if you choose to hone into that, your
Mm,
skills can help your community. Do you know what I mean?
okay. I got
So
you.
essentially, I have the skill, I believe, a joke is what I say is like, when God created me, he put too much, ability to speak and write by accident. Essentially, like, I
Yeah.
feel like,
Yeah. Yeah. I
I
hear
feel
you.
like
Yeah.
for whatever reason, I have the skill of communicating how I feel,
Mm,
the skill of articulating and the skill of kind of recording information. So
mm,
yeah, I decided to kind of use those skills within my own community. So for right
mm-hmm,
now, that's the African Australian community or those of African descent here in
mm,
Victoria. And then I started engaging in a lot of different projects, around that. Based on just like you were talking about this idea of positivity, because this deficient narrative around about Black people is as
mm,
almost as old as time, right?
mm,
Well,
mm,
as old as colonialism, we can take it as that far back. So for me, it's really important that I'm engaging with people. When you say positively, I think it's more than that.
mm.
Intentionally
Okay.
and consistently, with the
Mm,
outcome of a shared success,
yeah.
which I think is really, really important. So yeah, I think with my skills, I started off with the photo series Your Blackness is Beautiful, where I went around and started interviewing people and celebrating people and tagging
Mm,
them on my account. And then from there, I was able to understand, okay, you know what I mean? Like, what do people really want? Like, what is it that we're missing as a community? How is it that I can align the people that I know to get a desired outcome?
mm,
And I think that's got me to where I am today, and the projects have been able to bleed into each other. My most recent role was working as a communications manager in the Youth Justice Precinct for the last 2 years. And then for me, I
mm.
think that was really the straw that broke the camel's back.
Okay.
Because most of the people in youth justice is of African descent.
Mm,
Most of the people that are transitioning from youth justice into the adults prison is African. And
okay.
people think here in Australia, oh, like it's just an American thing, you know what I mean? But if we
Mm,
look at the statistics, Indigenous Aboriginal people per population, per capita, based on the amount of people they have, are the most incarcerated in this country, more than those that are
wow.
African American in the United States. And then for me, the person that the group that sits second, like right second to that, like if it was like a queue, like right second,
Mm-hmm.
um, is African people. You know what I
Africans.
mean?
Okay.
So yeah, I just like seeing kids coming in and out and not getting supported, seeing members of community, I feel kind of being a bit lazy and slack and maybe a bit
Mm,
comfortable. And I had this urgency in me to kind of, help, like I said, Black people, because yeah, for me, the time is now,
mm,
to
mm.
use our skills to like come together.
Mm-hmm. Nice, nice, excellent, excellent. So I want to take it back a little bit and just walk me through. So what was life like for Miriam in high school? What was it about your high school experiences that sort of, got you thinking about where you want to go after high school? Did you always want to get into sort of like youth justice after high school, or what were your aspirations when you're in high school?
That's actually a really funny question. So, I was a completely different person. I mean, stages of
Mm,
my life. I was a completely different person when I was in high school, like completely different person.
mm,
My parents were a lot more conservative. I'm the oldest child. Like, my skirt was always up to my ankle. No one wanted to invite me
mm.
to any of their parties. I was doing people's
Wow.
homework. Like, I was like, you're stereotypical. No, I literally had like the best relationships with teachers. Only went to school to
Mm,
study,
wow.
completely separate from this realm of social activity.
Yeah.
So for me in high school, and then I gravitated towards people. I was in a predominantly white neighborhood and went to a white school. So I
Mm,
wanted to be white naturally. So I was really
mm,
leaning towards whiteness. And then my only little interactions with Black people, every time I was with them, they're like, "Oh, you sound too white. Oh, what you think is too white. Oh, this is too white."
mm,
And my community had defined, had correlated intelligence with white, or so the way you speak with
mm.
white. And every time I was with Black people, in those little moments, I felt like
Yeah.
I was being pushed away. You know what I mean? So I was like,
Mm,
you know what, Black people, I don't want to hang out with them. They don't understand me. You know what I mean? Like, this is not
yeah,
my
yeah,
identity. It's not who I
yeah.
am. And I
Now, is it, do
quite
you, do you, sorry to cut you off. Do you think it's as a result of how you look? Like, I mean, did you ever get, people trying to guess where you're from as a result of where you look? Because I think, depending on who you ask, people might think you're racially ambiguous. Did you ever get that in high school, where people are just like,
No, not
are you
no,
Ethiopian? Are
not
you something
necessarily.
else?
Like
No, not
my
really.
hair, my hair was braided all the time, and
Mm.
like I think I look African.
Yeah,
There's
no, no,
times
I
like
agree. Yeah.
when my hair looks different and stuff where I don't, but I never, no one never didn't know that I was African, that I had some
Yeah.
African in me. Like, sure, yeah, I might be light because it hasn't been, hot,
Mm.
but catch me in about 2 weeks and I'll just
Yeah.
catch up.
Right.
No.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think it was more. I didn't feel like I didn't want to be like it's white Australia. I didn't want to
Mm.
celebrate my culture because it's not celebrated and valued. All my friends
Mm.
were white. The person that I liked was white. The kids that I wanted
Mm.
was white. The places that I wanted to go to were, Europe. Like nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But it just consumed me, and the more was in certain spaces, the more I subconsciously conditioned myself into thinking that blackness was less than, which is
Uh,
again not an old narrative, and it's
yeah.
something that a lot of actual African people hold with. It's a byproduct of colonialism, and it's something that's celebrated. It's something that's celebrated. If you're unable to hold your culture properly, especially in
Mm.
white Australia, your life is easier. Your life is easier. Okay,
Yeah.
so I was able to understand that even though I couldn't put it into the words that I'm putting into today, and it was only until I went to Ethiopia, and I live there and I work there. And I said, you know what? I want to commit to understanding this different side of myself. I can't go to
Mm.
Yemen and I can't go to Somalia right now because of, so many different things. Ethiopia for me was the only place that I could go to. So I went there and then my whole perspective changed. My whole
Hmm.
perspective changed in terms of my identity with my history, my culture, and then my views on all my African brothers and sisters around me,
Got it.
understanding the culture from people there helped me understand, oh, wait a second, like, you know what I mean? Australia's chips,
Yeah.
chips. And like,
Yeah.
actually, like,
Yeah.
actually, Africa is where I need to be. And right now, that's
Yeah.
my ultimate goal. I'm trying to
Okay.
transition back into Africa. All the
Mm.
businesses and the services and the projects that I do, if it can't be translated to people in Africa, the average person in Africa, then I failed. So that is my
Wow.
goal. My goal is to go back and to set up exactly what I'm doing here there
Mm.
and to lead, because people there don't have any resources at all.
Hmm.
I feel like here the problem is with the mind and your perspective, but there the problem is a lot more deeper rooted in resourcing and the corruption of government that unfortunately
Mm.
has harmed generations of kind of development. And Africa has more resources, depending on where you go, and essentially, that's where I want to be. That's where this
Yeah.
conversation, this privilege, we have a lot of privilege and safety in this part of the world. And for
Mm.
me, I guess that bubble popped when I was able to travel around Africa and really listen and see, well, actually, wait a second, like this conditioning, what I have been subconsciously um, accepting and embracing, because everything is a choice. You can be presented with something, but you've also got to choose to accept that. So where
Hmm.
everything that I was accepting, was wrong. And I needed to
Mm.
change that. And I needed to change that. And then I started saying, well, fuck it. What's the worst that's going to
Yeah.
happen? How far can I take this? And I'm just going to keep on
Right.
taking it as far as I can.
Yeah. So as a young, African Australian lady, sort of like, I imagine there would have been a few obstacles with you traveling by yourself. Oh, I don't know if you were by yourself, but just you traveling back to Africa. So, how did your parents actually take it when you explained to them that this is something that you want to do, and how did people actually like interact with you back home, and how do people interact with you here? Like, do you find that people take you seriously, or are people likely to see you more as sort of like a sex symbol? Because I hear a lot of young
Mm.
African Australian women saying, "Oh, people just they fetishize me." They don't take me seriously as someone who's here to, bring about change. Or what's your experience been like?
Firstly, I'll start off with the last question. How do people care? Well, like, what do people think of me? I don't know, really. And that's not really my issue. Secondly,
Mm.
how do I feel about being fetishized? I think if you're a woman in this world, you're going to be sexualized. And I think in white Australia,
Mm.
if a black man, you're hypersexualized. So I don't think I'm
Mm.
any different to my male counterparts that are hypersexualized through sports or modeling, or through the entertainment industry or the music industry. No, even me when I was, coming out of my shell, going out, People didn't want to be with me, non-African people, or didn't want to be with me because of how I looked or who I was. It's because I was different. I was exotic. You know, there was something different for them. So there's an element of us being hypersexualized on every level, depending on where you are, depending on your socioeconomic class, and depending on what you do in this world. In terms of
Mm-hmm.
traveling, because I had moved around a lot growing up, and I think I'm such an independent person, I often
Yeah.
travel by myself. So that has never been an issue for me. Going to Ethiopia by myself, my family was there, so I wasn't really by myself. But going to
Yeah.
Ethiopia by myself and starting that journey
Mm.
was not new to me. When I got there,
Okay.
though, this is the most important thing, right? So when I got there, when I first got there, a lot of people were just like, you're a foreigner, like you're a diaspora, which is often what happens to African people, even if they were
Mm.
born there. When they go back to their country, their hometown, their village,
Yeah.
whatever, oh, you're not African. Do you know what I said? I said, listen to me right now, okay? I
Yeah.
am African. I am here and I'm not going anywhere. This is my home. Sometimes you need to kind of like, there's a bit of a push and pull between a bit of that power,
Mm.
you know what I mean? And then when you
Mm.
when you come in with that authentic energy and you say, I'm not going anywhere, and I love you because I am here. This is me. This is my motherland. This is where I belong. This whole continent. I don't care what corner it is. I don't care how I
Mm-hmm.
look like. Because
Mm.
technically, I'm half Ethiopian. You know what I mean? If you want to get
Mm.
into the specifics of it, and somebody will turn around and they say, well, you're not African. Well, how about, yes, I am, because I'm here
Mm.
to develop this whole continent and I'm not going anywhere.
That's
So
it.
after I came in with that energy, they were like, all right, Bess, you're one of us. So, like,
Mm. 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 Mm.
it's, you gotta kind of they're not going to roll out a red carpet. They don't understand my experience. They think I'm privileged and I'm educated and I don't
Mm.
like the parts of Africa that I like. But I do love the parts of Africa that they love. And I'm not just going there to get lit and to party and to get stuff that is cheap and to send photos back to my mum. No, I'm going there to understand my culture authentically, to connect with my elders, and to contribute actively back to my community. And the more
Mm.
you articulate that and show who you really are, and dare I say, fight for that, like everyone else in Africa fights for their life every single day, even though
Mm.
their parents are born there for generations, then yeah, you get a seat at the table. You feel me?
Right.
Like, you get
Yeah.
a seat at
Yeah.
the table.
Yeah. But
It's
then
not going to
what do you
be
say? What do you say to people who say, well, that's very easy for you to say, Mariam, because you're light in complexion. So, a lot of doors open up for you. What do you say to people who say that?
damn. There's a lot of different shades in Ethiopia. A lot of people are quite fair, and we've
Mm.
got Gambella, which is filled with what you would call here South Sudanese people. I come from the beginning of humanity. I've
Mm.
got every shade of brown, and there's
Yeah.
still civil conflict. There's still
Actually,
misunderstanding. So no,
yeah.
I don't agree with that. But you know what? If you want me to be blacker, how about I can sit in the sun and then we can have a conversation in 2 weeks. I can get blacker if
Yeah.
that's gonna make everyone comfortable. You know what I mean? Like, it's not
Yeah.
for me. For me, I feel like colorism is a byproduct of colonialism, and that's
Yeah.
what we hold on to ourselves. Okay, if someone
Mm.
turns around to me and treats me differently, which they all have in this country, more than in Africa, more in
Mm-hmm.
Africa here, people treating me differently based on the shade of my skin, especially with people next to me that are either dark or considerably darker than me, I pull it up. But I can't change anyone. You can only change yourself.
Mm.
And to be honest, colorism is not really at the top of my priority right now.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
stems
Yeah.
out of privilege and miseducation.
Mm.
I have
Mm.
time for
Mm.
that. You
Tell
know
me
what I mean?
something. Yeah, tell me something though. Tell me something. I had this conversation with someone the other day, right? And they are light in complexion, and they said something to me which I don't know. I don't know if it's profound or not, but it was very interesting. They said that if there was a pot, let's say a pot in a movie that was being advertised for being for an African girl, right? And they got the pot and they were lighter in complexion, they would consider giving that part to someone who is darker in complexion because they get more opportunities than the person who's darker in complexion. What do you think about that way of looking at things? Would you ever give up a seat at the
Lord.
table for someone who's darker in complexion? I mean, this is the whole colorist, or colorism conversation, but sort of like, how do you approach something like that? Would you give up
Bro,
your
this is
seat?
what I'm trying to tell you, bro. This is what I'm trying to tell you.
Mm.
Listen to me. Listen to me very carefully, all right? Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
woken up. Listen to me, okay?
Ah, here we go.
Listen, we've got Moroccans, we got
Mm.
Egyptians that are not,
Mm-hmm.
we've got Algerians, okay?
Mm.
They are all African. They are not
Mm.
claiming to be Africa, and I'll come to them in a second. I'm not there yet. For
Mm.
some reason, when we speak about Africa, we only speak about certain parts of the continent. There's people from
Sub-Saharan.
Madagascar.
mm,
Okay? They're lighter than me. Okay?
mm,
We need to drop this. The only reason colorism is in the conversation is because it's in context to relationships and the
mm-hmm.
fact that men are
Yeah.
sometimes
Please continue. Yeah.
vessels for colorism. Do you feel that?
Mm. Yeah, yeah,
It's in
yeah.
the context of romantic relationships where it really feels like a topic of conversation. And now you're saying how people professionally see each other, but for me, it's really in the context of relationships.
Mm,
Do you know what I
mm,
mean?
mm. Yeah.
What do I think about your last question was what do I think about giving up my seat at the table?
Mm.
Well, it's going to be my table anyway. There's no seat to give up
Yeah.
when I'm at the
Oh,
table.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
there's no seat. I'm not giving up a seat. That's
yeah.
not the kind of situation I'm trying to establish for myself, in which my seat can be
Right.
taken or someone can. No, no, no. I'm trying to create something that's mine that I can share for all African people, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And at the end of the day, again, remembering Egyptian people are African. Shout out to Egyptian people, but also claim your African identity. Moroccan
Mm-hmm.
people, shout out to Moroccan people, claim your African identity. Algerian people, all the people that don't look like this, claim it because you're African, okay? And at the end of the
Mm,
day, when we talk about when I talk about Africa, I don't know how people talk about Africa. When I talk about Africa, I'm talking about every part of Africa.
mm.
Okay, I'm not
So,
talking about what people see in Hollywood films.
yeah.
That's agenda. That's agenda
So,
driven.
I'm very interested because you said half Ethiopian, and then the other part is half Yemeni and half Somali. So, how have you been accepted on that side? So, the Yemeni and Somali side, how have they sort of, you know, accepted you? Have they accepted you? What's that experience been like?
Well, look, to be honest, like here's the thing, because I'm not Muslim and Islam is such a
Uh-oh.
massive part,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Islam
It's
is
all
such a
good. Yeah.
Islam is such a massive part of these cultures.
Mm.
I don't feel like I'm accepted by members of my
Wow.
community because I'm not Muslim, which I understand, which means that I don't have that degree of cultural understanding when it comes to certain rituals or practices, and it was separated from me. I get that.
Mm.
But again, it doesn't matter because people in Africa didn't accept me. It takes time. I get that.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for everyone to flock their arms around me and their support. I know who I am. I know where I'm
Yeah.
going. Everything is a bonus, you know? Of course, I'd love to
Mm.
be accepted by every part of my identity, but I'm not foolish enough to believe that that's going to happen overnight. And
Mm.
at the end of the day, for me, my understanding comes back to the day I go to Yemen, whenever the time is right, and the day I go to Somalia properly, safely, to understand who my people are, what my heritage and my lineage is, and how I
Mm.
can bring that into the conversation. But for now, I'd like to say that the whole world accepts me. Yeah.
Right. A lot of people may have missed that, but you said to Somalia safely. Why did you add that word safely in there?
Because I feel like as a woman, as someone that travels by myself, it's
Mm.
about how I can safely make money, travel, understand.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
I'm such a wild person. Like I just like I want to go around. Da, 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 da. I
Yeah.
need to do
Yeah.
research. I need to be safe.
Mm.
I want to come back alive.
Of course.
And it's not
Of
it's not
course.
Australia. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Australia is very
Yeah.
privileged and comfortable. As a woman, anywhere in the world, in a developing country, there are serious risks in terms
Mm.
of my physical safety. So I need to consider that because I want to live.
Mm. Have you ever had situations where you're overseas and you're just like, oh man, I knew this was going to happen? Like where your safety was, at risk or something could have potentially happened to you and it was like a close call or anything like that?
Oh yeah, 100%. Shout out Moe. Yeah, Australia is definitely an opportunity. 100%. I remember this one time that my grandmother lived in a really good neighborhood, like, compounded and stuff like that, where all these like government officials lived and stuff. So it's pretty chill. And
Mm.
we'd hear stories of people putting rocks on the road to rob you and stuff
Okay.
like that. But like for me, like every day I walked out of my grandma's house in Ethiopia, like there's a chance of me getting raped, chance of me getting kidnapped. There's a chance
Wow.
of my things, of course, 100%. This is not a joke. Like, you know what I mean? I took public
Mm.
transport. I was always among people. I never wanted to, I wanted to experience everything and be out and walking around. And there's a big threat to my safety as a woman, because
Mm,
unfortunately, as much as I love Africa, it's extremely patriarchal. And what that means is like, my safety is in serious risk all the time. So I learned to, be a bit more strategic about what I say, where I say it, obviously what I
mm,
wear, that's a real thing. And the
uh,
spaces that I'm hanging out in, of course, like, that is an issue that I think we can abolish if we're all there as members of the diaspora together, saying, hey, this is how women are treated in the Western countries. This is how women are treated in our countries. How can we change that narrative among the patriarchy of men? It's a big problem in Africa. Different parts of Africa,
mm,
different kind of shapes of how women are killed, are kidnapped, or are belittled and minimized, not getting the right positions,
mm,
not getting certain titles, always expected to be a housewife and a provider, as opposed to, like, leading organizations and starting initiatives, and holding that space. It's
mm,
still very kind of behind when it comes to stuff like that. So,
yeah,
when I went to Ethiopia the first time, they're like, where's your husband, where's your kids?
yeah,
All of that, very constant, of course, because that's their cultural. They're on a different cultural wavelength, you feel.
uh-huh,
And a lot of that is fueled by patriarchy, and I get into a lot of
mm,
fights with people, like a lot of
yeah.
fights, you know but
Do you ever feel pressured when people bring that up? Like, where's your husband? Where are your kids?
no,
Never.
I think in Ethiopia, when I was living there, yeah, like, because I was around seeing young mothers and seeing kids, so like seeing the life cycle, of course, like when you're
Mm,
there,
mm,
like it impacts you. But boy, getting a divorce and is even worse, and having
yeah.
kids that are not like happy,
Mm,
and at peace and have access to opportunities, that's even worse. So I'd much
yeah.
rather take, oh, Mariam, where's your boyfriend? Oh, Mariam, you're getting a little fat. That's why no one. Oh, I'd rather take that. I'd
Yeah,
rather
yeah,
take
yeah,
that than literally just faking a marriage or some kind of
yeah,
love situation for my family, which is what I think
yeah,
some people really do a lot, heavy, heavy, heavy.
yeah.
And I'm not going to do that, because I've seen how other generations of people got fucked over by that same mistake, and they're still paying the
Mm,
price. And I'm not going to do that. I want my kids to
mm,
be happy and have opportunity. I want to have a partner that doesn't isn't bonded by trauma and bonded by bullshit that comes from a different part of the world. No, I want to start afresh. I want to start new.
mm,
I want to do something
yeah, yeah,
different. How is my
yeah.
how's my life is different. My professional career is different. Shouldn't I give that energy to my love, to my love
Mm,
life, to the person I'm going to marry? No, I want that to be different too. It's
makes
across the
sense.
board. It's a
Yeah.
difference is not just on your eyes and on your shoulders and on your knee. No, no, no. Difference is a part of your whole body. Your whole
Mm-hmm.
body, from your
Mm-hmm.
hair to your toes, is
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. You brought up something about, challenging the patriarchy, but anytime you do that, there's always going to be a little bit of pushback, right, from men saying, and they're going to say things like, who do you think you are? You're bringing Western ideas, to Africa. Why are you bringing your Western ideologies here? Like things have been working fine. What do you say? How do you even respond to something like that?
Well, look, that's a question a man would ask. Let me tell you.
Mm,
And I say this to my brother all the time. If you're a woman, you've been pushed back since you were a child. So we're used to it.
mm.
Yeah. So it's not.
So you're just used to always getting that pushback.
Totally.
Mm.
100%.
I mean, how do you
It's
think though?
not.
How do you think we in the diaspora can do more though, in terms of that? Because a lot of the time it's cultural, right? It's cultural. So how do we even have an impact
Mm.
in changing people's perspectives or perceptions and how they treat women? How can we go about doing that? Because number one, we're far away, right? So we're limited in how we can convey those messages. Number two, when we go back home, people always look at it as, well, you're very fortunate speaking the way that you do. You're very comfortable. You live overseas. So how do you think that we can actually help bring about change as people in the diaspora?
I think women of African descent need to come together now in 2022, because we're talking about the future. We're not talking about the past. If we're developing something for the future, we sit down with people young, people old, and we come up with a plan and a strategy. It's about collaboration, and it's about accountability, in which a woman doesn't feel unsafe to go back to a partner, in which a woman doesn't feel unsafe to speak up in her workplace, in which a woman doesn't feel unsafe to take a risk that's going to put her future forward. So essentially, it's easy, of course, for me to sit here and say, oh, this is how men should treat women, but at the end of the day, statistically, you know we're on so many levels, we're at the bottom, so
Mm,
it needs to be structural, a whole structural change. And
mm,
because it's not just cultural, it's societal. It's not just societal, it's in our entertainment. It's not just in our
mm,
entertainment, it's in our clothes. It's not just in our clothes, it's in, you know so it's literally on every level since you're born. So
mm,
it's literally a whole structural, like, reshaping. And you're probably thinking, oh my god, that's a lot. Well, slow and steady wins the race. You know what I
mm-hmm,
mean?
mm-hmm. Right.
Slow and steady wins the race. And it's about empowering women as much as we can. Like, I can't change the pay gap, for example. I can't change that.
Mm,
I'm not in parliament. I can't change that. But when I go into work, I can strategically ask questions, and I can go to women or that I trust and have conversations, and try to advocate for myself, if you
mm,
can.
mm.
But then again, look, here's the thing,
Right.
like, we're in
Yeah.
a time in history where things are really tough, and
Mm,
advocacy and speaking up, can result in so many different things. So I understand the limitations people have in speaking up, not thinking what they think, but speaking up, and kind of putting that action into bringing it into life. But that's why I say in collaboration,
of
we do
course.
it together.
Of
Yeah,
course.
yeah,
Yeah. So let's bring things back then to Australia, right? So one thing I've noticed is that, when you think about America, you think about African American culture, right? There's an idea that pops in your head when you think about African Americans. Yeah, in terms of the UK as well, there's sort of an idea in terms of identity of what that looks like, like people from the UK who are black. But in terms of Australia, it seems to be a little bit more disjointed. It's hard to actually pinpoint what African Australian culture looks like, right? Why do you think that is? Why do you think that it seems that there's still sort of like a crisis of identity in Australia? And why is it that, I mean, we've been here for decades now. Why is it that we don't have something like, let's say, an African union for, like, people that work in corporate, or, just
Mm.
workers? Why is it that we don't have that? What do you think it is? What's the delay?
Look, I think there's many contributing factors. There's many
Mm-hmm.
contributing factors to why there isn't more cohesion within different African communities.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think I think the one issue is that, as a community, right, we're
Yeah.
disjointed because government has disjointed us, white Australia has disjointed us,
Mm.
um, separated us, and we have, most importantly, chosen to separate from each other. We have
Okay.
chosen to be less empathetic and less forgiving to our peers. Now,
Yeah.
let me tell you something. Let me start with the end before I go into the beginning. What goes up must come down. That means, if we're friends, there's an inevitable chance that there will be a tear in our relationship.
Okay.
Inevitably,
Yeah.
right? We need to learn to understand how to not only advocate for each other, but to repair what is broken. That doesn't have ego, that doesn't have um, pride or selfishness. That says, hey, you know what? This is our system of repair.
Mm.
This is our system of repair within our community, because our community gets locked up. Our community suffer from substance abuse. Our
Mm.
community, members of them are unemployed.
Yeah.
Our
Please continue. Sorry,
community,
I
no,
don't know,
that's
something's wrong
okay.
with my camera. Yeah, but please, yeah, our
No,
community,
that's all
please
right.
continue. Yeah.
There's all these different things that harm our community actively, and it's
Mm-hmm.
coming from
Mm-hmm.
all these different spaces, right? And
Mm.
sometimes those perpetrators look like us. So ultimately,
Yes.
at the end of the day, it's understanding that we need to learn to repair and hold each other accountable. And that's why I
Mm.
think it's important that for me, I always say to myself, how am I speaking from a place of celebration? How am I speaking from a place of joy, of happiness, of love? Because that's what we
Yeah.
have forgotten as African people. We've forgotten that
Mm-hmm.
we have created everything in this world that's good. Music and
Mm.
fashion and food and art, that all comes from us. Okay?
Mm.
And everyone's got a piece of the pie and commodifying that. Yet among ourselves, I say a joke. We only come together for two reasons: to party and to fight. That's it. That's where we're at.
Mm.
Okay, that's where
Mm.
we're at
Mm.
in terms
Mm.
of why we're coming together. So at the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day, we need to challenge ourselves into saying, you know what, hey, we should be doing this or we should be doing that. And if you create an African Union, right, then we need to support that.
Mm,
Regardless of my personal relationship with you, what part of the continent you come from, your tribe, etc. It doesn't matter. I need to
mm,
invest in your vision and understand that it might not work out at one point. But do you know what? We're not in fucking high school. We need to get shit done. We
mm.
don't have to be best buddies with everyone. No, we need to get,
Yeah.
we're in a process right now of development, which means that we need to put some of these things aside and sacrifice because love is sacrifice. The
Mm,
core of love is sacrifice. I love you, your growth, your development. Therefore, I am willing to sacrifice something.
mm-hmm.
And you yourself are sacrificing something. And then we come together and then, you know,
Mm.
we don't take things so personally.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's quite simple. I think like, you know, we as people that have led civilizations before have successfully, you know, collaborated together different cultures, different faiths, different languages for thousands of years. And I think it's only now that we're confused in our mind. You know, we're
Yeah.
confused in our mind and we don't believe we can do it. Not they can't
Mm,
believe they can do it. We don't really
mm,
truly believe we can succeed.
mm,
I can
mm,
smell that. I can smell that colonialism off you. And the only
mm,
reason I can smell that is because it used to smell off me. So at the end of the day, you know, there's so many ways, there's so many different types of ways we communicate, there's so many different types of ways we work together, and we need to have one combined strategy.
mm.
This is how we are going to fight for this.
Gotcha.
This is how we're going to fight for the kids in jail. This is how we're going to fight for the young people that are incarcerated. This is how we're going to fight for people that are unemployed. This is how we're going to fight for people that are victims of domestic violence and substance abuse. This is how we're going to fight to get lawyers to protect our community, to educate our
Mm,
community. This is how we're going to fight for a community center so we have our own space.
mm,
These are all things that I'm fighting for, but I'm only one person and I've got a
mm.
very short life, meaning
That's
that
right.
I could die tomorrow, I could die next week, I can die next, you know. At the end of the day, it's not, my life is not guaranteed, your life is not guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
That's why when I started off with African Kings, it's all about legacy. What does
Mm,
legacy mean?
boom.
In our culture, legacy means that I create something with the intention that I don't keep it.
Mm, perfect. Yeah. Now you said it.
Do
You
you
said
get
it.
do you get that? Do you
I
get
get
that?
it. 100. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely get it. And on that topic of legacy, however, what I want to do is I want to go a few steps back and extrapolate something that you mentioned. I want to sort of do a deep dive, and I want to hear from you, right? So the levels of incarceration, what do you think causes that, right? There must be something that we can basically work on as I'd say young people or young influential people in the African Australian community, right? So young African Australians that are incarcerated, they need guidance, they need help. What is it that we can do? First of all, how do you think that that's happening? Why are we so overrepresented in that particular category? Because we seem to be overrepresented. So, firstly, why are we overrepresented? Secondly, what can we do as people who are outside?
Man, I really love the comment section. Shout
Yeah.
out. I appreciate it. Okay, so there's okay, we'll start off with how what crime is, okay?
Mm,
Crime is a sociological product. The crime within the African community is the same as the crime within the Asian community, within the European community, within the South American community. What does that
mm,
mean? It means that it is a product of someone's environment. Okay? Statistics have said this time and time again. But our community will not accept that. They think it's inherent in them. Inherent
mm,
meaning that it's in you and you can't take it out, right? It's
mm,
not a choice.
mm,
So you gotta start off with the original conversation.
mm.
How do you define where crime comes from?
Yeah.
I believe crime is a product of your environment and your upbringing. And if we go very specific, it's the family unit. That in Africa is the center of everything. Your family. Okay? That is what gets you up. That is how
Mm-hmm.
people recognize you. That is who you fight for, and that is who you pass on your legacy to.
Mm-hmm.
your family. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
In white Australia, they want to separate us. It's an individualistic Western society. What does that
Mm.
mean? They support you when you're by yourself. Now, if you take a step back from that, what that means is really you're more vulnerable for attack. Okay?
Mm.
You got less soldiers around you.
That's right.
It supports white communities, for example, because they've already privileged. So they can be by themselves and navigate and still succeed. But we cannot. Family unit, no fathers, no positive role models, which is no legacy,
Mm.
no information sharing. And you're right, it's not all of us. This doesn't happen to all of us. But an
Mm.
absence of something significant in which a young person feels alone, feels afraid, feels like that they can only be committing crime. That's their only option. Not all of them, some of them do it by choice, of course.
Yeah.
But a majority of them don't want to be there, and they'll never say that.
But if we
They
go,
commit
if we
crimes.
go, yeah, sorry to cut you off. If we go deep into that, what do you think has caused this absence of male role model within the household? Why is it that it's more like it stands out more in the African Australian community? What is it about us that causes that to
Okay,
happen? I mean, is it where we're
I'll get
coming
back.
from, or
Now I'll get back to that in a second. I got to finish this
okay?
last point, right?
No worries, no worries. Yeah.
When the Australian media decided to say that the African community was African gangs and had a full-on assault on the African community through mainstream media, which is subconscious conditioning of information, every other community started treating us differently. It went from
Mm.
treating us like a refugee and a person that's in an advertisement with flies around our
Mm-hmm.
face
Yeah.
to
Mm-hmm.
essentially African gangs,
Yeah.
in which there was a premeditated thought and action that African people were going to commit crimes. So
Mm.
you had more African people being followed in their neighborhoods, being harassed by police. And then at some point, when you keep on poking and saying, you're a gang member, you're a gang member, you're a gang member, you're a gang member, you are a criminal,
Mm.
particularly African men. You're a criminal. What are you doing there? Three of you is a gang. That kind of pressure, that pointing, that constant pointing breaks
Mm.
breaks people. Okay?
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Breaks people. So then young people say, yeah, bet I am a criminal.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm trying to say? I
I
am a
do.
criminal. And this
Yeah.
is what I'm gonna do.
Mm.
Because these young people are angry. Now you ask the question, why are our uncles and our fathers and all these people, why are they absent? Because
Mm.
they weren't able to assimilate properly into this country. They don't feel like they have a purpose or connection on this land. And they've been treated worse
Mm.
than us. And they don't know how to hold that. They don't know how to hold that. They don't
Mm.
know how to say that. So they'll drink or gamble or fall into substance and separate themselves. In Africa, everyone is around you. Everyone, you walk out on the street, there are people
Yeah.
there. You
Support
can find
network.
multiple communities in a second. By six
Mm.
o'clock in the morning, 24/7, there are people everywhere. And what
Mm.
does that mean for people to be everywhere like that? Let me tell you what that means. It's a sounding board. You're not stuck in your head. You're not
Mm.
going crazy in your head. You're having conversations with people. You're having coffee and tea on the side of the street. You're connecting to
Mm.
people on the bus on the way to work. You're at work. You're eating together.
Mm.
You'll never feel like you're single. You'll never feel like you're alone.
Yeah.
Never, ever, 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 ever. That country, in our DNA to be with each other, to laugh with each other, to dance with each other, to love each other. It's in our DNA. And you can
Mm-hmm.
see that, you can smell that, you can hear that in Africa, in every part of Africa. In this
Mm.
country, there's no one here. Look, it's silent. You can't hear anyone.
Mm.
You can't smell anything. They don't talk about your culture. They know nothing. They turn around, they say you're a refugee. You can't speak English. They say you're not smart enough. They say you can't raise your kids. And they start going into their mind, you know?
Mm.
And no one prepared them for that, to be honest. They saw
Yeah.
war and they saw conflict, but this assassination of the mind. with which many people have spoken about during lots of parts of the world, that is a tougher battle if you're unprepared. Okay.
mm,
And as we know, the patriarchy of Africa, it's not celebrated to share your emotions and your culture. Do you feel that? It's not in our
mhm,
culture. And that's why women are oppressed in Africa.
mm,
So even though they're celebrated for being, oh, she's the mother of my child. She's the mother of my child. I'm gonna, not
mm,
really. There's not that respect, there's not that consideration, there's not that care. It's different. It looks different.
mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. So, as an African man, what do you think I can do? So as an African Australian man, what is it that I can do? Right. So we take it down to the individual level. What can I do in order to help bridge that gap? Because it's clearly a gap, right? And we can see the results of it, right? We can see in the levels of incarceration. So what is it that I can do on an individual level to help?
That's a good question. I think on an individual level, everyone needs to identify what their skill sets are and how they can contribute to the cause. One. Secondly, if
Mm,
you're an African man, you need to start mentoring and helping younger Africans that need support because they don't have fathers and they don't have uncles. So we need to fill in the gaps.
mm, mm, mm,
And lastly, you just need to be yourself. There's no one type of way of being a black man. There's no one type of way of being a black woman. We're in white Australia. The world is changing very quickly. We need to understand that we're not defined by the color of our skin, regardless of our culture. We're still human at the end of the day and shouldn't put too much pressure on ourselves in providing or doing stuff because that's how nothing happens.
mm,
At the end of the day, there's a lot of boys that need help. What that means is they just need someone to play ball with them. They just need someone to talk to them and say, hey, man, you're going okay. Hey, those emotions you're feeling, that's normal. Hey, man,
mm,
like, you're going to get past this. You don't need this right now. It's okay if you don't have a job, if you're not getting hired. It's okay.
mm.
As a man, this is why. This is what I've seen. This is what I've experienced.
Yeah.
If we came together more regularly, that would naturally occur. That's why you've got these faith systems that are so important in our cultures, because all these different people come together regularly, whether that is the mosque or the church,
Mm,
right?
mm,
But what happens when you're not religious? What happens when you don't go to those spaces
mm,
regularly and you don't see anything but what your family provides for you?
mm.
And sometimes that's not always the best thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
I
like
do.
I think for just predominantly for African men, it's just like, talk be a mentor. Be
Mm,
a mentor, honestly. Help one person. If we all help one person, this issue is done within a month. Trust me.
mm,
But no one wants to do that because they think, oh, we've got to be someone to teach. No, we've got everything. White Australia want to say, you have to have this degree to be smart. You have to have this experience to do this. You have to have this certificate to do that. Do you get what I mean?
mm,
No,
mm,
you don't need that. No, you need to come. You need to come as yourself.
mm.
With the intention of progression.
But then, where would the average African Australian get support? Because for a lot of African Australians, they always feel like in Australia they're always told they're too loud, to this, to that, to they can't be themselves. We have here what's known as tall poppy syndrome, where you know, if you're way too confident. So how does someone overcome that in Australia?
Like, again, who are you seeking validation from right now? Because I'm
Mm,
asking you to help young black people. So what is that? I don't get it.
mm,
That's not even that your question has nothing to do with the conversation we're talking about. What I'm
mm,
saying is
mm,
there are people in primary school and high school that need the support of their elders to survive this country. They need skills
mm,
and information. And they might need that from people that are the same gender as them.
mm,
And if you can share your experience authentically, then you can
mm,
save someone's life.
mm. But I think one
That's
thing
it.
we can't understate the fact that simply because someone is not incarcerated, right, that they don't experience some sort of discrimination. right? That
Of
they don't
course.
also have some difficulties, right? So I guess what I'm trying to get to the bottom of is if you actually have a look at the way that African Australians are being presented, say on TV and the media, right? It's always for certain roles, right? It's always for
Hmm.
specific roles, right? You never really see African Australians in roles that are traditionally reserved, say, for white Australian males.
Yeah,
Right.
I
So I
agree.
guess, well, I guess so. So what I'm saying, I think you were sort of on the right track when you said, where are you seeking validation from? But I want you to tease it out a little bit more, right, in terms of what people can do. Because sometimes people don't feel they belong. I'll give you an example. I'll use
Yeah,
myself as an
totally.
example, right? So I lived in Adelaide, then went to Sydney, now I'm in Melbourne, right?
Radelaide.
So Adelaide, yeah, Adelaide was cool, right? Very quiet though, and I felt that I had to go to a bigger city because I felt I was too loud for Adelaide, right? Went to Sydney. When I got to Sydney, I felt that I was way too loud for Sydney, right? And people just didn't like that. I couldn't find the type of support I thought I'd have within the community of Africans within Sydney, which is very interesting, right? Where I did find that, however, was Melbourne, right? For some strange reason, every time I came to Melbourne, whether I had a show, it doesn't matter what it was, I always felt people here were ready to support. I had shows where people who don't know me would line up in the front and scream like they know who I am. You understand? I would go to parties and I would feel at home. I'd feel happy. I'd feel accepted. And so I always knew that for myself, one place I'm always going to end up in is Melbourne because I always have that. I have people around who accept me for the kind of person that I am. But I couldn't find that in Sydney. But maybe there's a different way of doing things. And so I
I
guess
think
what
I
I'm trying
understand.
to get to the bottom of is then, yeah, what I was trying to get to the bottom
I
of
understand what
is
you're saying.
how do people, yeah. So how do people get that type of support if they can't feel it, in wherever they are, whatever city they're in?
As you got to understand the history of this country. This is a
Mm,
colony, okay? This is a colony. Black people will never belong in white Australia.
mm,
One. Two. Two. I need you to hear me out on this. When you say respectfully, oh, people came to my shows and stuff like that, I wouldn't say that's real support.
mm,
That's not real support, brother.
mm,
This is what real support for me looks like.
mm,
Yo, have you read this book? Yo, eat something that's different, that's better for your nutrition. Hey,
mm,
yo, here's some information on stocks to help you
mm,
financially elevate.
mm,
Pulling up and supporting how you perform as an entertainer doesn't even
mm,
scratch the surface of your support, your true support.
mm,
Does that make sense? I don't think that's support. I think
mm,
that's pulling up and showing face and having a good
mm,
time. That's
mm.
great. But that's not the kind of support I'm at. I'm talking about actual support.
Mm. Well, it depends, right? It depends because
But do you get what I'm trying to
you
say? Like,
1000%. But you could curate a show in a specific way where it's not just a show where people go, they watch a performance and they leave, right? You can have a show where at the end maybe you've
totally,
got
totally,
things that you're selling. At the end of the show, you got workshops where you'll actually be interacting with people that have come
for
to the
sure.
show, right? So this is about really recognizing that as an entertainer, right? There are ways to actually create a community with the people that
I
are there to
agree.
support you, right? So because I think
Agree.
if we just look at it as a particular way, then it leaves us a little bit too blinkered. We want it to be multifaceted, right? So we want people
I
who
agree.
are, say, into entertainment and not necessarily, and I'm not saying people who are entertainment don't read, I want everyone in the African community to feel supported, right, regardless of what it is that they do. Because one thing that I've noticed, right, unfortunately, where we sort of get it wrong in the African community is I've been to these seminars that are basically designed for people Africans in corporate Australia, right? And the unfortunate thing is that they look down on people who haven't been to university, right? People who
Yeah,
speak with
totally,
a very deep African accent, and
totally.
that is holding us back. It holds us back. You understand what I'm
I
saying?
hear that, but
So we have to be,
you're
yeah,
not
we have to be
listening.
able to,
But you're not
we have to
listening
be
to
able
what I'm
to,
saying.
yeah. All right, try me
Because this is
again,
what,
try me again.
hear me out, right? Hear me out.
Mm,
And I've really just had a proper conversation with you right now. So I don't mean to be rude. I just want to get to the
mm.
core of what
No,
I'm
no,
really
it's
trying to
okay.
say because I
It's
don't
okay.
believe it's being
Yeah, yeah.
understood. you being an
Yeah, yeah.
entity, like
Let's do it.
so
Yeah.
many people come to my event, unity and support. Okay, I understand that.
Mm.
That's
Sorry,
not
you're
what I'm
cutting.
talking
You
about.
cut just a
All
little bit.
I
Hang on.
all I say is
Hang on.
I
Just
run
wait 1 second. Hang on.
workshops.
Just wait 1 second. Sorry. It's cutting you. It kept cutting you off. Hang on. All right, sorry. Go. All right, go. Go.
I run workshops and run events, and people come and pull up with the
Mm,
energy that you're talking about. I understand that. There's a
mm,
space for that. I understand that. That is not what I'm talking
mm,
about. Let me bring it back,
mm,
okay? You as a man, you
mm,
as a man, okay? You're not only an entertainer, okay?
mm,
That's what I'm trying to say. I don't see you as someone that produces something for this society.
mm.
I see you as a future father. I see you as a son. I see you as an entertainer. I see you in different, when you said multifaceted, I see you as lots of different
Exactly.
things. So when I say
Mm,
how do I support you, I mean all of you. I'm not trying to give
mm.
you a book to say, oh, you haven't gone to university. I've gone to university. I think you should read. No, I'm saying this
Yeah.
book might help change your perspective. I've got many books,
Mm,
many different types of books. When I say, hey, let's go out and talk about nutrition and how it impacts our mind and share information, it's because, not
mm,
because I don't think you're doing that, because I think it'll help you maybe down the track. Maybe. When I'm
mm,
saying, hey, this is information on stocks to financially elevate you because you might become a father or you already are a father, and why not have more money and have your own financial
mm,
security? That's me talking about a different side of you. When I say, hey, bro,
mm,
look, I've got this really great product to help your hair grow and to da 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 for your skin, da 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 da. That's your vessel I'm helping, I'm supporting.
mm.
What I'm trying to say is people pulling up and showing up is great, but that's not completely supporting you. That's supporting one part of you that you're
Uh,
showing in
you,
that
uh,
moment.
I don't know. Yeah. Got you.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense? That's only supporting one part
It
of you
does.
that you show. And I'm
It
saying we
does.
need to have a
Mm-hmm.
more holistic view of how we support each other.
Mm,
That's all I'm
mm.
trying to say. That's when I mean
Okay.
support, I don't mean, of
Yeah.
course I'm going to pull up to your event and I'm going to share your event
Mm,
and I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to bring the right energy, but that's not
mm,
enough for your true development, because I don't
mm,
want you to just be average. I want you to be great. I want you to be
mm.
the best
Exactly.
human, period.
Yeah. And
You
I
get
think this
that?
is where then yeah, and I say and I think this is where I recognize just how privileged you are, right? As someone who's lived in Melbourne, right? Because I've noticed that people in Melbourne are just so actually used to just even having people pull up to a show that represents just one thing. Whereas someone like myself, who has come from these cities where, like Sydney, I don't know what it's like now, but there is no SOA. You understand? Like if we even had and think about it. Think about this, right? Like people in Melbourne look at SOA as, are you kidding me? That's just a nightclub. But that's how privileged people in Melbourne are. Like there's so
Okay.
many like I've seen poetry slams in Melbourne. I've seen like sporting events. I've seen some, and it's just like African people there, and I'm like, this is incredible. I've never seen anything like this in
I
any
hear
other
that.
city
I hear
other
that.
than
I
other than Melbourne.
agree.
So that's why you get a lot of people from different states that come running to Melbourne, right? When there
I get
when
that.
there's a show
I
that's
get
touring
that.
the whole of Australia, because when you come to Melbourne, you basically get to experience as close as possible to an authentic African experience, because Melbourne is just so welcoming. Do you get what I'm saying? But
I
I think if
agree.
you've lived here, for a while, you kind of take it for granted a little bit. That's why I actually moved here, right? Because it's like from the
Yeah.
outside looking in, I look at it and I can hear what you're saying. And
Yeah.
but for me, I'm just like still just going to a place like Footscray. I go,
Well,
wow, man. Like I mean, my
yeah.
sister came
Well,
from New South Wales just to go look at Footscray. She's like, yo, where are the black people at? You know what I'm saying? Like that is something that we take for granted,
I
just being
hear that.
around your people.
I hear that. I agree. But here's the thing, right? I was raised in
Mm,
Sydney, Western Sydney, like
mm,
Western Sydney, like
yeah.
proper Parramatta,
Blacktown,
Blacktown,
yeah.
Auburn, Lakemba. I
Mm,
was born in these
that's me.
neighborhoods. Okay, right.
Mm,
Auburn
mm,
has a stronger business African like a struck like there are more African business owners in Auburn than there are in Footscray. Facts. This is a
How long
fact.
ago? How long ago?
This is a, I
Yeah,
was born and raised there, and I would travel intermittently. I would walk around.
yeah.
I do my scope. I do my scope.
Mm.
Now Footscray is extremely gentrified. It's extremely gentrified. If you walk around, I
This
invite you.
net
I
look. This
invite you.
network is hating. This network is hating big time. Sorry. This network. Sorry. Continue. Auburn. Auburn. That's one of my favorite places to visit, by the way. But please continue.
Yeah. I don't know if you can hear me now, but I guess what I'm just trying to say is
Again. Again. Yeah.
I invite you to go to Footscray and count how many African businesses there are. It's considerably died down. I was raised in the streets of
Yeah.
Auburn, and there's more African business
Yeah.
owners in Auburn than there is now. West Side in Sydney has a really strong presence. Okay,
Yeah.
here's the thing, right? Without trying to go into the
Yeah.
specifics, people might not know the places that we're talking about because I've been in Perth and I've been
Yeah.
to Sydney and I've been here. So I've been to a few different places,
Yeah.
but culture is created by people. Any
Mm.
culture is created by people. We are the vessels of culture. Culture is
Mm.
not the vessels of us. We are the once we change, culture changes just like that. We must create a
Mm.
culture of
Of
businesses
course.
and events. That's what's happened here in Melbourne. There's been
Mm.
not outside of the black community, not within it.
Mm.
Outside of the black community, you've got the music industry, you've got the entertainment, theatre, arts that have worked actively in creating a culture here in Victoria, not just
Mm-hmm.
in Melbourne.
Mm.
And we have
Yes.
reap the benefits of that. We did not create it.
Mm.
We did not
Mm.
strategize it. We did not ask how it was supposed to look like. No, no, no.
Mm.
We reaped from a culture that people created in this city. So I think saying, oh, this city is this city. Yeah, I guess like I understand that, like honestly, but like overall, anything can be created
Of
if
course.
people have the
Of
right
course.
intention to do that. You know what I mean? And for me, it comes down to a
Yeah.
bit of consistency. Consistency is key. If you're doing something
Mm.
consistently with the right intention, then people will support you, regardless of where you are. You
Yeah.
could be bumfuck somewhere in regional
Yeah.
Australia, and
Yeah.
people will pull up,
Of
and people will
course.
pull up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't
That's
know
just
when was
my
the last
opinion.
time. Yeah, no, no, that's okay. I don't know when was the last time you went to Sydney. Like my family's still there, and Auburn's changed big time.
Oh,
They're
really?
now like yeah, counting on one hand. There's one Ethiopian restaurant left. The other Somali one closed down. So now there's
Oh,
just
damn.
one. Yeah, there's literally just one. And then on this side, the side where there's the ANZ, there's nothing left. And there's like this corner where these like Sudanese uncles like
Yeah, yeah,
sitting
yeah, yeah,
around. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, yeah. But literally
yeah.
everything's closed down. Like around the
I
corner,
think
right?
it's COVID.
There
COVID.
wasn't. No, no, no. I went there recently. There was an office there that says like African something agency, but closed down. Everything's closed down. Like
That's
it's
really
really,
sad.
really sad. But let's get to something a little bit more positive. African kings. African kings. So talk to
Let
me
me just
about
step
Africa.
inside.
Okay, cool,
I'm
cool,
just
cool.
getting like literally killed by mosquito bite. I think
Yeah.
I've done my outside stint. 1 second.
Nah, nah, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. You know. But listen, I'm glad we had this conversation. I'm seeing things from a
Likewise.
different perspective, things that I'd never thought about. Well, I thought about them, just not from the perspective that you're coming from. It's always good to hear things, from different perspectives. They spark something in your mind. You know,
Totally. 100%.
so yeah, that's pretty good.
And
So
shout out to everyone that's been joining the conversation.
yeah, yeah. Actually, before we get to African Kings, there's another initiative that you did. Something about what was it again? The pain behind her shoes, something like that. Like correct
Oh, my
me.
shoes,
What
my
was it?
regrets.
There you go. My shoes, my.
My shoes, my
That's
regrets.
it. My shoes, my
Yeah.
regrets. Yeah. Okay. Tell me about that first. Let's talk about that first. What was that about?
Oh, yeah. I need to start that again. It was like a side
Okay.
project that when I was a journalist. And essentially, yeah, I really loves talking to people and
Mm,
understanding people. And I
mm,
wanted to pursue a unique project. I'm always trying to do something different. And I
mm,
was just like talking to a journalist at the time.
mm,
He'd worked in it for decades, and we were talking about regrets. We had a really, if you know me, you have a deep and meaningful conversation with me in an instant. So I had this
mm,
deep and meaningful conversation about regrets, and then he told me his regret, and he was like, "What's yours?" And I was like, "Hmm, that's a really good question. In fact, I
mm,
see this
mm,
conversation becoming something." So every time I was traveling for journalism, when I go to Indonesia or Korea, or I
Mm,
travel or whatever, to different parts of the country or whatever, I'd pull people over and I'd say, hey, like, I've got this project called My Shoes, My Regrets. If I could just take a photo of your shoes where you are, and if you can share with
mm,
me what your regret is, it's anonymous. And then people kind of, put the regret together with a shoe. And then
mm,
hence this kind of like rolling photo series called My Shoes, My Regrets. And
mm.
I did it for like nearly 2 years before I stopped.
Wow.
Only
Wow.
because,
Okay.
yeah, only because like just the shift in my life focus. I'd moved to Ethiopia, and my kind of like interests and my relationships with journalism was different.
Mm.
So yeah, so we kind of changed. But I want to get back
Wow.
to that. But that was a really informative series for me. And yeah, I
Mm,
would just post it up on a website, and then yeah, just
mm.
invite people to reflect on what they regret and how that
Yeah.
regret is impacting their present day life.
Wow. Wow. That's
Yeah,
incredible. That's incredible. Yeah. We really appreciate we basically this is actually a way of actually giving you your flowers while we still have you. You know, we recognize the awesome work that you're doing. You know what I mean?
appreciate that.
And I want you to know that we really appreciate that. We appreciate that, a great deal, you know. So in terms of these sort of initiatives, what sort of motivates you to keep going with them? Sort of what's the drive?
Do you want the honest answer?
Hmm.
It's a great challenge.
Yeah.
No, yeah, totally. Like for me, I get really bored in this part of the world.
Mm,
And for
mm,
me, like I feel like, my brain just has all these ideas. I have all this energy and it's never matched. I want to do all these different
mm,
things, and it
mm.
just I feel like there's no space for me. So why not do what I think should be done? And why
Mm,
not do something that's a challenge, that's something that's challenging, that's going to challenge me, that's going to develop me, that's going to help me understand my community, help me understand my culture, help me understand
mm,
myself, help me improve on myself, so
of course.
I also, towards the end of my advocacy, because I was a journalist, so there was an element of that, and I traveled a lot, so there's an element of that kind of, um but for me there was just I got more and more frustrated at the lack of urgency and the fact that people weren't literally seeing people dying either physically or mentally around me. And more, I would walk
Mm,
into these spaces and I'd see more Black people detached, more Black people um, adopting unhealthy habits,
mhm,
more young people locked up, more police targeting
mm,
Black people.
mm,
And then I thought, well, like, I was thinking like there's so many people that do community work. It's really important to understand that. There's so many people that do what I do in their own spaces. There's so many people that sit down
mm,
with young people, so many people that advocate, so many people that have literally laid the path for me to jump on and say, hey, I want to help. This is all about collaboration. It's all collaborative,
mm,
essentially. At the end of the day, what I'm doing is not unique, is not new. The only thing that's unique about my process is me. Everything else has been done
mm,
before, has been written before, has been discussed before. So ultimately, at the end of the day, with the whole I'm using my skill set situation, I'm just using my skill sets to help the people that I can right now while I
mm,
have the time to help them. Because in white Australia, too many Black people are abused and neglected, hypersexualized, minimized,
mm,
and thrown to the side of the curb. And what disappoints me is that it's from my own people a lot of the time, and that it's that element. It's the from my own people element that gets me frustrated. So I think, okay,
mm,
well, let me try to understand, how do we hold people accountable? How do we establish repair? How do we create systems of development that's sustainable, that has culture incorporated in it? How can I collaborate with my community? How can I stop importing the issues from Africa through my elders into my community? How can I separate away from that and connect with young people that are like me, that want to help the world? you
mm,
know
mm.
how can I do that?
Yeah,
What does that actually look like? What would it look like if I did this, that, or this? Well, how would people really respond? And like I said, people
yeah,
have been advocating in this country for
of
decades.
course.
It
Yeah,
just looks differently in 2022 post COVID white Australia. And that's the
right.
area that I'm in right now. Do you know what I mean? That's the area,
Hmm.
because
I
the
do.
fight was
I do.
different. The fight was different at the beginning of the 2000s. The fight was different in the 80s. The fight was different in the 50s. And it all looked different based on technology and social habits and all of that. You know what I mean? So at
Mm,
the end of the day, right now in 2022, coming on to 2023, with the cultures of colorism, with the cultures of all these things that we're talking about, how can we nip this in the bud?
mm,
Like what, how can we do
mm,
that together? You know what I mean? I think that's what I'm fascinated with. And like, so far I'm grateful enough to be supported by my peers. That's really important. If I'm
mm,
not supported by my peers, if enough people call me and say, you know what, Mariam, stop, then I stop.
mm.
Of course.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
Of course. This is a
Yeah.
democracy.
Of course. Yeah, yeah. Earlier on you said something like, we only come together to either party or fight, right? And I just want to
Yeah.
recognize that today was the debut for Black Panther. So, a lot of people will
I
be
saw
out
that.
and about, is it today or tomorrow? Today?
Oh,
I don't know.
yeah.
Black Panther, I think whenever it is, but it's this week, right? What do you think about that? That, a lot of people are really happy about, a black superhero. They're really energized. As someone who's sort of been in the space for a while, do you think that really helps or it's a temporary thing? How do you approach that? Like, what are your thoughts on something like Black Panther in terms of helping us as African Australians without blackness in white Australia? What do you think about it?
Well, I went to a private screening and watched it yesterday.
How was it,
So
by the way?
it was all right. It was okay. It was
All
good.
right, just
Uh,
wow,
as in
it
like,
was all right. It was all right. Oh,
yeah, no,
okay.
it was good. It was good. I'm not really like a Marvel franchise supporter like
Okay,
that. When I used to be a
okay,
nerd, I'd much rather like comic books. So I'd much
okay.
rather read comic books. And the narratives that are in the comic books are a lot more accurate to the writers and stuff. So
Yeah, they're
for
deeper.
me, yeah, they're deeper. They explore this
Mm,
character complex more. So for me, I've always
mm.
naturally, even with films, gravitated towards reading a book about. I'd read
Okay,
the book and I wouldn't watch the film. That's just how I
okay,
interact with media. So yeah, I watched it last night. It was a private screening. It was really beautiful to see all these different African people come together and dress up and show their culture and stuff. I
mm,
saw that. It was so cool. It was awesome.
mm.
You ask an interesting question. Let me start off positively before I get into how I feel.
Uh-oh. Okay.
The currency, the social currency of 2022 means that you are validated based on how you present yourself in terms of social media or entertainment. Okay. What
Okay.
does that mean? That means people generally will value me more if I know what Netflix shows are on, and I know what the Kim Kardashians do, which I don't, and I don't do all of those things, or I know those TikTok dances. I am valued more among my peers because
Mm,
that is the baseline and that's the social currency of acceptance. Does that make sense? So
it
we got to
makes a
go
lot
to
of sense.
we got to go to the context of the situation. What does that mean?
Okay.
In that context, Black Panther is important because people
Okay.
value entertainment and media,
Mm,
particularly movies and TV shows of fiction more than
uh-huh.
fact. Okay?
Mm,
That
mm,
is the situation we're dealing with. Because that is the situation that we're dealing with right now, okay? Black Panther is really powerful. You got African black women that are leads.
mm,
We got authentic representations of culture. What's really awesome about Black Panther is the correlation between Africa and technology.
mm,
Super important.
mm,
More young Africans that get into STEM, that get into coding, mean that we are more advantageous in this new technological age. When we go to space, the time will come.
mm,
Africans need to be prepared with that technology and information. We need to be a part of that race as
mm,
Africa, as a continent. That's where I'm
mm,
thinking in the future. We need to
mm,
understand that.
mm,
Now, Black Panther does a great job in solidifying that African people are academic. African people, have the ability to be technologically advanced.
mm,
Technologically advanced as a civilization. Very
mm,
important.
mm,
But it's still fiction. It's still fiction, right?
mm.
And what does that mean for me? What that means for me is more people will pull up at a Black Panther 2 screening than pull up at a workshop where I say, hey, let's talk together about how we put our community forward.
Mm.
And then I think, oh, okay. I should have invited the Black Panther crew. Maybe people will come.
Mm. Mm,
Whatever you do in your free time is whatever you do in your free time. Maybe I'm too serious all the time, but at the end of the day,
mm,
it's fiction. Fiction.
mm-hmm, mm,
It's fake. It doesn't exist. Am I making people upset? It doesn't exist. What that means is there are African people that are homeless, that have no job, that are unemployed,
mm,
that are on drugs, that are victims of domestic violence, that are literally racially attacked by their teachers every day to drop out of science. Kids are attacked at school to drop out of subjects, to go into VCAL because they don't believe that they're smart because they're too problematic. So here's my challenge right now. After you watch Black Panther 2, have a real conversation about Black empowerment in your context, in your everyday life. Because it doesn't make sense for you to cheer on Wakanda and walk past people that are literally dying around you every day, mentally or
mm,
physically.
mm,
So
mm,
I
mm,
don't have
mm.
an issue. It was actually interesting. I came out, I'm not going to talk too much about it because I don't want to spoil it, all right? Because I think you should
Yeah.
watch it. I think we should
Okay.
support that. But,
Mm,
like, I watch it, so I feel like I got all these things that I want to say. I don't want to say it. But
okay.
essentially, I was thinking about it when I was leaving the cinemas, and I was just like, yeah, a bit conflicted, about how I stand on
Mm,
this. At the end of the
yeah.
day, where we see African people positively succeeding, it's a tick. But
Okay.
in this day and age, everyone loves to talk, loves to create, loves to imagine.
Mm,
Wonderful. There's gonna be a time where we need to act. When will that
mm,
time be? When will that time be? When everyone's dead? When everyone's locked up? When everyone's unemployed? When everyone's
mm,
gone through serious mental health issues? When is it? What is it? What is it that is going to make you do something about your community? Real talk. Because
mm,
like down and you'll entertain a fictional part of the world. And you won't sit down and say, hey, in Footscray, there's X amount of people that are literally on the street. Or in a certain neighborhood, sorry, I don't even want to name neighborhoods. Sorry, I take that back. There's certain areas of
mm,
people on the street. Black businesses, because of COVID, are suffering.
mm,
In a capitalistic society, we need money. Kids at school are being bullied by the teachers and are disengaging from school, which means that they're unable to truly understand what it is they're going to become. If they have all the information and choose to step back, that's okay. They don't even get all the information. Does that make
mm,
sense? So at the
mm.
end of the day, like a teacher will go around and say, "Oh, let's watch Black Panther. It's your culture. Let's watch Black Panther. Let's just like empower people." Da, 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 da. No,
Mm,
that's
mm,
not. That's not enough. That's what they want us to do. That's the standard they accept us to be. A fictional
mm,
character. That's what they want us to be. Fiction. We're not fiction.
mm, mm,
We've got the best resources in the world. Okay, we're soon to becoming the largest population in the world. You got people like
mm,
China that's interested in us. Okay. We have people that are so smart in Africa that are breaking ground every day. And we don't hear
mm,
that and we don't see that. Okay. They don't want us to see that and they don't want us to hear that. If all of us in Australia, every single African person migrated to Africa, there's a place for them of safety and peace and acceptance and care and love.
mm,
Fact. So I guess in terms of the Black Panther situation, power to you if that's what you like. It's all an interest based,
mm,
But I will not pin my identity on a fictional comic book character because Black Panther
mhm,
isn't going to pull up and save my community. So it just becomes like everything else. It's entertainment. Entertainment, sure,
mm.
but you know, if that's all you see me as, then you don't really know who I am and who my people are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I really like how you've answered that. I really do. And I think it's a perfect segue to get into African Kings. So, African Kings is, so very similar, except that it's not fiction. It's based on real characters, based on, people that we know and recognize. So will you tell us a little bit about African Kings? I really don't want to sort of like give any sort of intro or anything about it. I think you're probably the best person to actually talk about it and let people know what African Kings is. Because I imagine people would have seen, posters around and they probably would have seen it online and they're not quite sure what African Kings is. So can you please just
Mm.
explain what is African Kings? Are you the brains behind it? Is there anyone else? Are you getting funding from it? Tell us a little bit about it, the project. And is it at its end or it's something that's ongoing, you
So
know?
during COVID, I created an independent documentary series. It was my idea. I created it all. I've led it all by myself, pretty much, with the support of the members of my team throughout the process in
Hmm.
terms of filming and editing, etc. But it's my idea. I've led it, everything. It's my strategic plan. Um,
Hmm.
I was in COVID, and I realized that the African community was suffering acutely
Mm.
to lockdowns, to the lack of school, to the lack of employment. More African people were dying during COVID, just drinking, just losing themselves. And it was really concerning for me, very concerning how many
Mm.
stories I was hearing and how it felt like people were taken by this disease, figuratively, almost
Mm.
a kind of paralysis. And it got me thinking about how African people are perceived and how I can contribute to using my skills in that space. And remember, the core of my practice is celebration, and the core of my practice is empowerment through positivity. So
Mm.
I decided to, because at that point I was working in the youth justice precinct, for me, the issue was with the boys more than with the girls. So I decided to start with my male counterpart. So I found through my photo series, Your Blackness is Beautiful, and my own research, 8 different African men from all different walks of life, from all different parts of Africa. And I interviewed them individually to talk about legacy, love, fatherhood, masculinity, spirituality, etc. Because I
Mm.
realized there was no information sharing among men that was authentic. Once I filmed those episodes, I released them. I got an Ethiopian graphic designer from Africa to design specific art for each of the men. So I dropped the trailer, I dropped the episode, I dropped the piece of art, and I did that during COVID to try to gain an interest in my storytelling. Now,
Mm.
since then, because my aim isn't to become a media service, not when it comes to this kind of empowerment. I put it up on YouTube, I might get a few hundred views. Is that enough? No. YouTube is not it. Instagram is not it. It's not enough. It was never my plan just to film something. My plan was to create an educational resource to support young African people in schools and educators to reshape their narrative of the African community.
Mm.
So, for the last 3 months, I went to 11 different locations, 6 different schools across the state. I got all the African kids, boys together in all these different places through my contacts. This is, again, independently. I'm completely independent. And we watched an episode, depending on their neighborhood, depending on their ethnicity, their faith. Because they're all different episodes, all different
Mm.
faiths and stuff. We spoke about what it meant to be a man. And I asked them a question, all of them. What's your legacy? What are you leaving behind? Wherever you end up, Australia, wherever. What is it that you are leaving behind in terms of your legacy? What does that look like? What does racism look like? How do you hold people accountable? Just stuff like this that we're talking about, right? And it was
Mm.
amazing. I spoke to hundreds of young people, hundreds. I think about 300 African kids, right? And then from that, I told all of them, every single one of them, they know my plan. I'm very transparent about what I do. My plan is now to get funding to train people like me to
Mm.
go out to schools across the state and to, for 2 to 3 months, sit down with these young community, like these young African boys, and talk about it step by step, covering a range of different
Mm.
topics, and then roll that out across the country. Because I can't do anything
Mm.
now. As I'm only one person, I can't be everywhere at once. No. I need to train people. Everything is about legacy. The things that I'm creating has nothing to do with me. It has to do with
Mm.
the next generation of people that is going to pick it up and is going to run with it. So once I get the funding, which will happen soon, once I get the funding and the support from African communities. That's key. Collaboration through African communities. I come into these schools for an extended period of time, and people can speak in their language. They speak in Swahili. They speak in Arabic. They speak to these African people on their own level, and I pick them, and we train, and they go out and they impact.
Mm.
Next year, I'm going to film African Queens. That's the final offering. I got African Queens, then I got African Kings, then you've got the one thing. But obviously, the most important part is the educators. Educators don't feel comfortable. They don't know. They don't have the space. I understand that. So I need to sit down and train educators and train teachers, train parents, tell them to watch the video, sit down, think about it. Think about what these men are
Mm.
saying. How can we avoid some of the stuff that's been discussed? How can we be a
Mm.
bit preemptive with our support with young people? So once I get the funding, because now this operation has become obviously a lot larger, once I get the
Mm.
funding, it's about training, it's about filming African Queens, it's about translating and making things accessible. And then people can go out in their respective communities if they choose and
Mm.
continue the conversation if they believe there needs to be a conversation. But I have gathered that it's very, very necessary for me to continue these conversations at schools and in communities
Yeah.
and down the track with parents and elders. I've seen a
Mm.
great appetite in that. So I'm going to keep it going until again someone says, you know what, Mariam, stop. Enough people. Enough
Yeah.
people, not just one person, not just one petty person.
Yeah.
Enough people say stop. Right?
Yeah.
So that's the game. That's the game plan. Positive,
Mm.
reinforcing positive narratives in schools and in communities, having a space for discussion, but it's rooted in authentic education and culture. And
Mm.
all my plans that I have, all the strategies that I have for community, I will share at the one time. So my
Mm.
plan is to invite all these members of the different African communities, and I present it to my elders and I present it to my peers. This is my plan. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I need your support. If you believe in what I am saying, now is the time to join me.
Mm.
Now is the
Mm.
time to collaborate. If you don't, that's okay, but this is going to continue.
Mm-hmm.
So it's collaborative.
Of
It's a
course.
collaborative process naturally. This will be
Mm.
presented, and I want to give everyone the opportunity to give
Yeah.
me their honest thoughts because I
Uh-huh.
get things wrong, obviously.
Mm.
Maybe some areas I don't need to focus on, maybe these areas I need to focus on. It's going to change. But the
Yeah.
premise is, what is your legacy? What are you leaving behind? It's not a 1 hour workshop or a 2 hour workshop. I need to be there for 2 to
Yeah.
3 months. I need to understand
Mm-hmm.
exactly what's going on.
Mm. So tell me, in terms of this, what are some things that have actually come out of African Kings? Was there anything that came out that really surprised you or struck you as odd, or what would you say are some standout, aspects of, the responses you were getting from these African Kings?
I feel like I got a really great response. There was nothing that really
Mm.
shocked me at all because I had spoken to many people about this. And
Mm-hmm.
really what I'm doing now is strategically planning how to engage with young people with this content. The
Mm-hmm.
content is not new and the issues are not new to me anyway. So I didn't
Mm.
feel like there was anything, I was proud of the people that put their hand up, and I was proud of my ability to bring someone African from Africa here to support this, and hopefully his
Mm.
art is shared with kids, and he's able to come here and connect and elevate himself. But for me, I feel like I've gotten a really great response with me
Mm.
going out and going there in person and holding that conversation. Because so I used to be a social media advisor, right? I used to work with algorithms and SEOs and all that. So it's an area of my
Okay.
expertise, right? For nearly like
Good.
coming on 10 years now. Okay. So
Mm.
like for me, like I understand how these platforms work, I guess, from a back
Mm.
end. And I'm not too pressed on how many Instagram followers I have, and I'm not too pressed about how many subscribers I have, and I'm not too pressed about how many
Mm.
views I have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more interested in going out and making the impact face to face and going through different communities and sitting down and having that conversation.
Mm.
That is the metric for me. Everyone has a different, it is important. Success is only defined with how you measure it. Okay.
Yeah.
Depending on your metric of success is how you define that success. I already have a metric. and it's working. Therefore, I'm successful to me. But objectively, if you use another metric, I could be failing. So
Mm,
it's really important to understand that if you have an aligned metric of success, an aligned
mm-hmm,
strategic outcome, then that conversation looks slightly different.
mm,
And I recognize I'm not too pressed on social media. I use it for my photo series and I use it to share parts of what I do. And I understand it's a social currency. That's important. I'm only here because I feel like I'm really forced to. But at the root of who I am and what I'm trying to do, like they said, the revolution will never be televised. What
mm,
does that mean? You'll never really see the revolution that's happening in people's hearts and people's spirits and people's souls.
mm.
And for me, I'm a bit old fashioned, so I don't mind doing that legwork and sitting down and having those conversations. That for me is where success lies.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent, excellent. So, look, during or throughout your conversations, did you ever have an instance where you were like, wow, I think this is toxic masculinity? I don't know what are your thoughts about toxic, that the idea of toxic. Do you believe in it? Do you believe in, a lot of people talk about this. I have my own opinions about it. But people sort of have this idea that, men don't really share, a lot of how they feel. And this is an instance of toxic masculinity. Did you ever experience that while shooting the series at all? Or what did that look like? And would you call it toxic masculinity? If not, what would you
I
call it?
don't. That's a good question. I just want to 10%, so I don't know how long my phone's died.
Okay.
But toxic max during the process, we'll start from the first. During my process, no, I didn't really, you know, experience that. Everyone was very receptive. Um, who am I to change how someone's going to act, really?
Mm,
Um, I can only hold myself accountable. I think true change comes from within. Does toxic masculinity exist? Let me tell you something about the English language, all right? As someone that studied it very well, okay? There's a
mm-hmm,
lot of different words to say a lot of different things.
mm,
At the end of the day, patriarchy is patriarchy and it presents in different ways. And that presentation is different among different cultures. That's it.
mm, mm-hmm,
That's it. At the end of the day, I
mm,
love my male friendships. I love the men that are in my life and I'm proud of what they do. And I want to
mm,
uplift and support them. So I don't want to come into a public space and put someone down. I want
mm,
to uplift everyone. So, sure, you have instances in our community in which people might say, "Oh, that's just toxic masculinity. That's just patriarchy." Da, 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 da.
mm,
Well, yeah, I kind of see that in that scenario, in that conversation, in that instance, or maybe ingrained in his behavior.
mm-hmm,
But how am I trying to support him in getting out of that? When was the last time you celebrated a brother authentically,
mm,
honestly? Like, I don't know. It's a bit kind of like imbalanced, hey? When you always pick,
mm-hmm,
pick, 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 pick on what someone does wrong. And when was the last time you picked on what they did right?
mm,
So for me, I have my own unique perspective on that. It might be based on my personality type, my relationships with people. You can chalk it up to whatever you want to chalk it up to. The fact that I'm light skinned, chalk it up to whatever you want to chalk to. At the end of the
mm,
day, everything's a balance. So if you're not celebrating someone as much as you're putting them down, well,
mm,
who's a real, like, what's the real? I don't get it. What are we talking about? Like, because
mm.
everyone's human, and
Yeah.
that's why I created the documentary series,
Mm,
because I want people to start celebrating brothers, and
of
I
course.
and African Queens is going to be a great experience. I'm sure as a woman that's going to be a very interesting experience. But essentially, it's we all make mistakes. We all. It's not an excuse. We all. Um, I'll speak for myself. We become people that we're not proud of. We do things that we're not proud of.
Mm,
Like we fault, we trip. That I think is human behavior. I think men are granted more privileges, yes, but are also less opportunities for forgiveness and repair, I
Mm.
believe. And I think that looks unique in the African community. And I think I remember when I came out with the show and I was talking to someone and he was like, yo, like, I'm just so happy you did this. And I'm like, well, like,
Mm.
why is that? He was a mate of mine, he was a good friend of mine. And I was just like,
Mm.
I was like, why is that, man? Like, it just, it's just a documentary. He's like, nah, man. Like, seeing a sister come out, like seeing a sister celebrate black men, like it makes me proud. It makes me
Mm.
happy. And I said, well, that is what I want. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to continue that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because again, it's a whole
Mm.
conversation, but words have a tricky way of binding people into a situation. And at
Mm.
the end of the day, if you're saying that person is a part of my community and he's going to interact with me and I want to see him succeed, then the first thing you should be saying is like, how do you feel? How did you get here? Why is it that you said that? How did this really happen? Do you want to talk about it? Do you want some time? Do you
Mm.
know what I mean? I understand you've been going through some pressures. You know what I mean? I understand you got a lot on your plate right now. Let's take a
Mm.
seat. Do you want to go for a walk? Space, repair, forgiveness. Instead of being like, oh, he's just toxic masculine, toxic masculine, toxic masculine, whatever.
Mm.
Bro, this person is human. You know what I mean? Damn, like,
Mm.
okay, if you're doing this 24/7, all right, that's a different conversation. But like in this moment, I'm out, I'm walking down the street, I'm in a conversation, and it's like, boom, 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 attack, attack, attack,
Mm.
and I'm like, hey, 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 like I'm personally not gonna do that. If you
Mm.
want to do that, it's up to you. Even if someone treats me like shit, I'm not going to turn around and say, oh, da 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 da. Like it's inherent, like crime, like it's inherent. Nothing is inherent.
Mm.
Nothing is inherent. It's just conditioned. So,
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to try to, like, um, that's someone's father, that's someone's brother, that's someone's son, that's someone's uncle, that's someone's nephew. That's a king right there. You know what I mean? That's a king. That's a
Mm.
leader. That's my leader right there. So at the end of the day, like it serves me no purpose in coming about it like that. That's a
Yeah.
white way of going about things, low key.
Oof.
That's a very destructive, colonial way of going
Mm.
about how we repair with people.
Mm.
That that's one part of the family unit that you're demasculating right now.
Mm. 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 Mm.
So
Mm.
like, do you know what I'm trying to say? And it's not for everyone. I don't want to stereotype it and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but like I think we need to just take a deep breath and say,
Mm.
okay, there's a difference between saying how you feel and helping someone get out of a situation for their development. If you just want
Mm.
to say how you feel, this is how I feel, this is how you made me feel, that's different. I'm having an emotional response. But if I'm trying to say this is someone I know I'm going to see, I know I'm going to interact with, etc., then what is the purpose of social cohesion to put them down? Say he ain't
Mm.
shit. I don't
Yeah.
know. People have different ways.
Yeah, Miriam, like you've really surprised me. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I did expect to hear a little bit of how you've presented yourself today, but only about a fraction. I had no idea of just the kind of person that you are and just how passionate you are about these initiatives, these projects, our community, uplifting people. I think anyone who's watching this and people that are going to watch this, for days to come are probably going to see that because you really presented yourself well here,
Mm.
So I'm very, very happy that you literally were my first guest for this. I don't know how anyone's going to top this, but it's not really about topping, right? We want to uplift all, everyone in our communities that are doing really great things, and, it sounds like you have a lot on your plate. I honestly don't know how you do it all, but so African Queens is coming up next. What else is going to be next for you? So what's
Well,
next for Mariam in the near future?
there are so many things. There are things that I can
Mm,
say and things that I can't. But I guess right
okay.
now, my main priority is I've done, I've gone out and seen all these young people and led these workshops. I'm going to sit down and plan this presentation for community, plan
Mm,
how I'm going to present where I'm going, and try to plan how collaboration and strategic development looks like in white Australia
mm,
among the African community in 2022,
mm,
2023. So over
mm,
the summer, I'm really doing a lot of work in just trying to put my experiences and my feedback on paper to try to, establish something to share for everyone to participate in.
mm, mm, mm,
Outside of that, it's, gratitude for living and embracing
mm,
and learning. You know what I mean? Failure,
mm,
success, and failure, two sides of the coin, you know? So
mm,
as I
mm,
succeed, I will inevitably fail as a part of the process. So it's about understanding, well, what's my support system? How can I remain transparent? How can I maintain who I am? Because we all go through different phases of our lives. If you're really developing truly, then you're changing, which is great. So it's about how do you hold that change, and how do you let that old version of yourself go and like come into that new version of yourself, regardless of what
mm,
journey you're taking. You know.
mm,
So for me, like I'm gonna go to community events and share my experiences and hold people accountable and be transparent and stay out of trouble. You know.
mhm, 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 mhm.
Outside of that,
Yeah,
like, have
yeah,
fun,
of
live life.
course.
What else? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? What else
Wow.
can we
Yeah.
say? Take it
Yeah.
one day at
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
time. Take it one day at a
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Wow. Excellent. Mariam, honestly, you're a very, very beautiful soul. We're very,
I
very
appreciate
privileged to
that
have
for
you
real.
walking
I appreciate
among
that.
us right now. We're happy to be around. Same time as you, thank you very, very much for today. We
Thank
really
you.
wish you all the best. We know that we're going to see
Same.
much more from you, and that excites us, that makes us very, very happy. I'm happy that I'm here in Melbourne, so I get to be one of the first ones to actually see what you're getting up to.
Appreciate that.
But honestly, as a person who's so busy doing such positive things in our community, I want to thank you as well for just giving us
Appreciate
the
that.
time today, to share with us,
Appreciate
your
that.
experiences and your absolute beautiful words. Can't thank you enough. You know, but yeah, it's been around 2 hours, and I just want to say thank you very much. Do you have any last words? Do you have any last
Yeah,
words that you want to share with people?
I've always got something to say, but I'll keep
Yeah,
it. I'll keep it quick. Firstly, I just want to say thank you for everyone who participated and shared their views. I really appreciate you. Some of the people I know, some people I don't know. Time is the most valuable thing that we own. So thank you for investing your time. Thank you for joining me in this space. Like I feel like it was a pleasure engaging in this conversation, and regardless of where I end up in my future, I will always have the time and opportunity for people that have an aligned interest. So
mm,
I'm really excited to bring everyone up in my journey, not just me. So I appreciate you as someone that's leading this, and I just encourage you to be consistent regardless of how people respond to this, and to embrace the change that comes as a part of this project. And
mm,
lastly, yeah, I just encourage everyone to, just like to enjoy themselves, you know what I mean? Like, regardless of what, like, kind of like, color spectrum you stand on, I'm not
mm,
always talking about African issues all the time. It's what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about social cohesion more broadly as a human society. So I encourage you guys to, enjoy your life, you know what I mean? And what that means is, be present, you know what I mean? And like have fun, everything will be solved. Everything will be solved. What has come will come again. So I
mm,
appreciate everyone's kind of interest in my projects, and I encourage you guys to reach out if there's anything that I'm doing in which I could be doing better. And outside of that, like, keep it peaceful. And I'll definitely see everyone for sure soon.
Perfect. Thank you
Too
very much,
easy.
Miriam. Thank you very much. All right.
No
Have a
worries.
good one. Yeah.
Take care. You
Thank
too.
you. See ya.
Bye.